Hold on, doggy. Hey, how's it going? Happy Thursday. Tell you what, I was just on one of the most frustrating lives of my whole life. My God, some of these people, man. Sometimes being polite just isn't the answer. Although, you know, I always try to stay polite no matter what. Even though every fiber of your being wants to start yelling. But, you know, you get some people that literally they're just so disrespectful. They won't listen. Like they just can't make themselves listen. They have to jump all over you. So I had to go. But I think I got a good question out. The other challenge is if somebody asks you a question, they just talk about something else. They don't answer the question. Because to answer the question would be difficult, right? And it would require some thought and some consideration of what you're bringing up, right? Hello, how's it going? So I don't know what to say except for certain people. Listen, we all get it growing up, right? We get some version of a narrative from people, and so it's just frustrating when some people get a narrative that is so distant from what most of us can see as objective reality, right? But again, hey, Tommy, thanks for your support. It's understandable, right? That's the thing I like to say. This is why I don't get angry at people who speak like this young lady did she's an Australian, I think she's of Australian heritage, but I guess she has dual citizenship with the IDF or with Israel, and she served in the IDF. But again, I thought that the people on the panel, and again, I know she said some very hateful things. Yeah, listen, I've gotten angry before. I'm human too, right? But I try not to, put it that way. You know, sometimes somebody pushes a particular button that bothers you a little bit, and, you know, you raise your voice, you get caught up, right? And that was happening with the people on the panel. You know, there were people that I thought were very knowledgeable and very thoughtful, but they were using language to back at her that was, you know, again, it was just a hate fest, basically. Which I don't like those. You know, I think anybody can do that. That's like third gate. She called you Chip Guy. I'm not sure what that means. Anyway, I see you're in the guest queue there, Allah of Israel. I'll bring you up. I just usually get a few minutes going here. But so invite me to ask you a question and answer directly. Allah of Israel. Yeah, listen, I'm happy to. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Just give me a second to get the show started. I know that you probably want to get onto it because it's on your mind. I respect that. And as I always say on this show, if you've ever watched me before, on every live, I say, I hope somebody who's pro-Israeli will come up as long as we can be civil and respectful and stuff like that. I don't think I got angry at that person at all. Somebody to claim I was angry, that's inaccurate, right? Because 99.9% of the time, I keep my composure. And like anybody else, every once in a while, you're going to have a weak moment. I have them like anybody else. But I don't think it serves the dialogue to yell past people. Right? And it's good to listen to what somebody else has to say, even if you completely disagree with it, because in the end, we're not going to be able to meet each other on any common ground if we just yell past each other. And ultimately, that's the goal of all this, right? Forget about all the back and forth, all the talk of everything else. The number one thing we need here is, first of all, a ceasefire so the carnage can stop. Number two, a path to safety with aid and rebuilding, some sort of dialogue to create a peaceful coexistence between these two sets of people. That's what needs to happen. So that's what I'm aiming for. That's why I maintain the way I do things, because I think that's the most important objective to keep in mind. Yeah, it feels really good, by the way, to tee off on somebody, right? Because you know what you feel in your heart is right, and you think they're wrong, so it's fun just to kind of let them have it, right? Yeah, I get it. But if that doesn't accomplish anything, what's the point other than making you feel better for 10 seconds, right? And sometimes that can be worth it, right? Let's face it, having a good argument once in a while can be a good thing for situations. But in the end, the goal is the goal, and we have to maintain that as a thing. Now, you may be dealing with people who really don't want to have that as the goal. They're not necessarily looking for peace. They're looking for domination and exploitation. In that case, I don't know what you do with that. And a lot of people would make that argument. In fact, those that made the argument on 10/7 that there's not going to be a peaceful resolution, and therefore something else is going to have to happen, right? That's an argument that could be made. The argument that the young lady was making, who has Israeli, pro-Israeli background, she said that everything was fine on 10/6, and then they attacked us on 10/7. They started this. Well, did they? Let's look at the circumstances before that. So, in 1948, a lot of people had to leave where they were living. You can explain it how you want, but that's what happened. And then subsequent to that, a lot of people have been harmed over time. They've been terribly mistreated. Yes, have they resisted at times they tried to fight back with whatever they could. They didn't have normal weapons. They didn't have an army. They couldn't fight fair. So they used some, yeah, they did, which you would too probably. You heard of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, right? It's normal for human beings to react. But what's happening in Gaza, you know, one of the things she said was, we left Gaza, we're no longer in Gaza, we don't occupy Gaza. Okay, maybe you don't have soldiers in Gaza permanently other than the Rafah border crossing, which you do if you don't know. But the presence in Gaza by military troops is no different than having the entire thing walled off and cut off from everything under the sun, including by air, land, and sea. That's called a blockade. And if you don't know, if you're not familiar with what a blockade is, a blockade or a siege is an act of war. It's an ongoing act of war. It's not some, you know, benevolent thing you do for your own security. You can claim it all you want. But when you physically restrict what people can have in their life over and over again for decades, that's called a blockade. And that is a siege, and it's a form of war. So you can't ask somebody else with whom you're at war to be peaceful, right? Because you're controlling them. Just as if they were controlling you and they were at war with you, you would have the right to resist the war footing they had over you. So if you were Israeli or you were Jewish and you were on the other side of this equation, which I don't think you'd want to be, if you were, you'd probably see it differently. But if you were in those circumstances, it would be understandable, not necessarily to be praised, because no one wants to see civilians get harmed, but it would be understandable within the broader context that you would choose to resist in some form or another. And by the way, that resistance has not been very ongoing. It's been rocket fire for the most part, crude, very unsophisticated, very unexplosive, very, very small explosive rockets. That's been the most of the resistance, right? For the longest time. And because of that, they have an Iron Dome system. The Israelis have an Iron Dome system, and they claim to defend themselves from this onslaught of constant bombardment of rockets from the T words, right? That's the term we use. But listen, one person's T word is another person's freedom fighter. Look, I always take my country as a historical reference. Now listen, my country, my forefathers did terrible things to the native population, but before we were able to do that initially, we had to fight off the colonizing force of the British. The British Empire had its teeth everywhere in the 1600s, 1700s. They were the biggest empire in the world. And they had a colony in the United States. It was called the colonies in the United States. And the Americans, who were under the colonization, the occupation of the British, were not getting the best of deals, right? They were looked at as, you know, subjects, basically, to the crown. So whenever you're under someone else's thumb, you don't have freedom and autonomy, the natural instinct is to want to get out from underneath that, right? It's just normal, right? It's normal. I still see you, I'm going to get you in. So with that in mind, why would it be any different? The United States resistance, you want to call it that, the Minutemen, the Patriots, our founding fathers, who we exalt as these great people, these heroes, they liberated the colonists, the American citizens, from the British colonization. They got rid of the British because of what they were able to do. Now, did they stand up and fight fair? Nope. Because they would have gotten destroyed, right? They could have gone and had a meeting with the Redcoats, which is what the British wore as uniforms, but they would have gotten destroyed. The British had better weapons. They had more troops. They were a much more heavily armed military foe, a larger adversary. You can't take on a larger, better armed adversary by standing face to face and saying, okay, let's hope for the best. No, you're going to get blown away. So you're forced to use unconventional tactics, right? So if you don't know this, for those of you who live in the United States who maybe support Israel and you don't know our history as well, and this isn't in the textbooks, by the way. We don't get this in our 5th grade textbooks because they don't want to put this stuff in there. But some of our forefathers did some pretty dastardly things to a lot of the British who were occupying the homes they had taken from the colonists. The British came in and took whatever the hell they wanted to. They took people's homes, they took people's farms, they just took shit because they could, at the end of a gun and threats of violence. So if somebody comes in at the end of a gun and makes you do something you don't want to do and you feel you want to get back at that person, let's face it, you want to be able to get your stuff back, but you also want to show them, you know, hey, why did you wrong me? That wasn't right. So the American patriots, we call patriots, they fought back in many ways. They did guerrilla tactics where they would literally try to shoot at a passing British convoy from behind a tree, unalive a few people, and then they'd run off. That was considered cowardly, right? It was considered T-word. Then they would go into the homes that the British had stolen from them, and they would literally unalive everything from top to bottom. If it moved, it no longer moved, right? Pretty brutal. That meant children, babies, women, men, livestock. I mean, everything. If it moved, it was, and that was to send a message to the British, you're no longer welcome here. We want you out of our land, right? So it's natural for someone whose families have lived somewhere for long periods of time, who got kicked off at the end of a gun or the threat of an entire village being massacred. Why wouldn't you flee at that point? You didn't flee voluntarily. You didn't flee because you had nothing better to do. You wanted to leave. You fled because you had to save your life. So I've heard that argument enough to make me sick. So at some point, you're always thinking of that the rest of your life. You're like, that was wrong. I want to make this right, right? It's an injustice, right? Now, injustices do happen everywhere. I agree with that. Some people get on me and say, Chip, why are you so critical of Israel when there's injustice everywhere? I'm critical of injustice everywhere. Trust me. But right now, with what we're seeing in the news and with the experiences I've had learning about this since I was 21, this is one that I can speak to with some level of knowledge and experience. And so, and a lot of Americans, you know, they haven't paid as close attention to this, understandably so, or other people in the world, because it just wasn't on their radar. Well, it was on my radar just by chance because when I was younger, I learned about it. But so I've always had sort of a sympathy towards this conflict because I've kind of, you know what you know, right? So anyway, so getting back to what I talked about. So if you're looking at the 10/7 attacks under the framework of everything was fine, we're protecting our security, how dare they attack us? Well, that's like the British person standing on the porch of the home they've stolen from the American family and the farm and stuff. They've taken everything they have. They're in miserable situations. They're living under colonial rule. And then you saying, how dare they attack me back? How dare they take their house back, right? That's absurd. You'd look at that from a third party and say, that's absurd. Of course the person has a right to fight for their house back, right? But why is it when your country, because it's on your side, in other words, you're acting like a British person, you're thinking like a British colonist. Why is it because if you're the one who took the house, that somehow if somebody comes back and wants to try to take it back, that they're the bad guy, right? That's called being disingenuous. Listen, if you want to own it and say, you know what, you're right, so what? That's what we're going to do. Tough luck, deal with it. Okay, I respect that. I can respect that. But this whining and playing the victim and, oh, how dare they? We just want to be in peace. All they want to do is, no, that's bullshit. That is bullshit. That is a bullshit, disingenuous argument. Okay? Now, I understand that people who love their own people and their own family members, their own communities, don't want to have people attack them. I think that's normal too. So to that extent, I feel great sympathy and sadness for anybody who gets hurt in any kind of a military activity or fight that where civilians are unalive. But just like what happened in the American colonies, there were things that happened that were not ideal or even, moral, right? Immoral. But they were done within a broader context, within a struggle for people who needed freedom. Whoever is maintaining the dominant position of power during someone else's struggle for liberation always views those people as T-words. Always. Never different. It's always the same conversation. However, when you're the one who's struggling against the occupation, the oppressor, you look to those people, not that you're happy that they unalive civilians, you're happy that they did something to resist the circumstances under which they find themselves. That's the difference. And people say, well, that's indicative that they hate Jewish people. They just want to... No. They're not even happy that individual families got hurt. When they cheered in the streets of Gaza, it wasn't because young babies were hurt and women got beat up or whatever the hell happened. I don't even know the details. There's a lot of questions about what actually happened. What they were happy about is that something that showed determination for their cause had some success during their normal desperation that's been ongoing for decades, right? That's the difference you have to understand. You would feel it too. You would feel it too. Just like the Jewish members in the Warsaw Ghetto probably felt proud of their more militant, more capable members who tried to fight back. You'd feel a sense of pride about that. Even if they grabbed a German child in a German cafe and hurt the kid as a part of hurting the adults, right? That's how you'd feel. It's a sense of like, we've been down so long on the ground and somebody finally got back up and was able to do a littlest thing. That's great. It's better than nothing, right? But until you're on that side of the fence, you don't know how that feels. When you make the argument that everything was fine on 10/7 or 10/6, you're looking at it from the standpoint of the British person standing on the front porch of a beautiful, farm in colonial America, living it up, having great food, having great wine, enjoying your family, having servants, that's a pretty good deal, right? Not a bad deal. Everything's kind of calm. You're able to maintain your position of power and enjoy the good life, right? But then something disrupts it and now you scream bloody murder. Oh, how dare they? We're just peacefully living the good life. How dare these barbarians attack us? Listen, you can't have it both ways. You know, you can't be in the Warsaw Ghetto and be prideful that the people tried to fight back against the Germans, and at the same time maintain a position of power over Palestinians whose land you stole 7 decades ago to form a homeland for Jewish people, which I think is a good thing that there's a safe place for Jewish people, but not at the expense of others. Just like I don't want what happened to Jews happen in Europe. I don't think that any person should want to benefit their society at the harm of others. So what the Germans did was awful, and what the Israelis are doing right now is awful. There's an equivalence there. Now, there's not these camps, not these massive railways and this massive program. I'll grant you that, so I don't want to make a complete equivalence. But in terms of the flavor and the feel and disdain for the other and the power dynamics, it's all very similar, unfortunately. And therefore, it's to be condemned. And I'm a very harsh critic of both Israel and of the political Zionist movement because of these factors. It's not because I hate Jewish people or I hate the residents of Israel. It has nothing to do with that. I could give a shit. I say over and over again, if the script was entirely flipped, and in 1948, the British decided because some rich Arab person bribed them, hey, let's do an Arab state that's going to take up most of historical power. Well, what about the Jewish residents? What about them? Oh, well, you know, they'll figure it out. And then the Arab state comes into power. And then the Jewish people get dispossessed to where they've been living for decades and centuries. And then they have to go around as refugees. They go down to this small little strip of land, and they're scattered throughout the region. And they're upset, rightly so, because they lived there for multiple generations in relative peace with their Arab neighbors. And then the Arab military decides, because of dubious reasons, to come across and take more territory. And now they're occupying it militarily. So not only was your family displaced in the first place, but now the place to which you've been displaced is now occupied militarily based on dubious claims of being under threat by others when there really wasn't a threat. That's what happened in 1967. Then they really start turning the screws down on you because you had the gall to resist. So over the years, this is the experience of the average Palestinian. This is the impression they have of how life has been for their forefathers and themselves. They've been on the wrong end of a bad deal for a long time. So it is normal to want to resist against that. Let's face it, that is normal human reaction. Okay? So when they say from the river to the sea, let me share this point, okay, because it's often misinterpreted. The point from the river to the sea, meaning from the Jordan River on the west side of Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea. That's what is historical Palestine. They don't mean to unalive every Jewish person in sight. Because if you rolled the clock back to 1870, there were Jewish people living in there, there were Arab people living in there were Muslims, Christians, the whole nine. They were scattered. They lived under the Ottoman Empire together in those territories. It's not about removing a particular ethnicity. It is about removing a political mindset that thinks they have the right to take over and subjugate others to their whim. That is part of it. So it's not about unaliving them. It's about removing the sickness that pervades that way of thinking, as well as reestablishing territorial administrative controls that allow everybody to live as best we can in relative peace and harmony. That's the point of from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Palestine once was Palestine. And the idea is to try to reestablish that. And the people who lost their homes have the right of return to where they were taken from generations ago, right? So that's my quick little, thumbnail sketch of it. Listen, I've studied it every which angle that I can. I don't know anybody from Palestine. I don't know anybody from Israel. I don't have any hatred in my heart for Arabs, for Jews, for anybody for that matter. I could give a shit, right? I take people on who they are individually and what they do and how they treat me versus how I see they treat others. And then I respond accordingly. So that's me in a nutshell. And listen, you can disagree with what I say all day long. I understand there's different points of view on this whole story. But to the day I die, unless somebody presents me evidence to the contrary, that's what the evidence dictates to someone like me who thinks down the middle about as many situations as I can look at. So, okay, we have someone here named Allah of Israel who's waited patiently to come in. I have a lot of people here. So let me have Allah of Israel, then I have Zain, then Abu Monday, and that's Neith. So that's the batting order. Please be patient. I'll get you in as fast as I can. Allah of Israel, I have one request, okay? I'm not going to mute you. I'm going to let you go for 2 full minutes. I'm not going to say a word unless you ask me a question. And then I'm going to come in and speak after you go for 2 full minutes. Sometimes people will come on and just talk. So also, I want to keep things respectful. This is not a Jerry Springer episode or whatever. So I first of all would like to know, if you don't mind, where are you from? Do you have Israeli citizenship or not? And then what is it you want to talk about? Are you there? Are you there? I tell you what, you may be away from your phone. If you come back in, I will happily let you in once you come back in. Because I'm not trying to cut. Listen, I'm not trying to cut off opposing voices. If you followed me for any amount of time, and by the way, real quickly, for those of you who are like, who the hell is this guy? If you're seeing me for the first time, nice to meet you. My name is Chip Barnes. I'm an Army officer. I served in the Army. I'm an Army veteran. I served in the first Persian Gulf War back in 1990. I learned about the Israel-Palestine issue when I was 21 years old, just before I went into the Army. One of my college classmates gave a presentation on something called the First Intifada, which totally changed. It was an uprising that took place in 1987. And in 1989, I learned about it. I was like, this is messed up, because I always had a different view of what Israel was all about. It completely changed my mind. It made me upset. It made me feel sorry for people who were being on the wrong end of a bad deal. So that's kind of where I got to where I am. So let's see if, so we have, I think I had Zain next. So it's at Zainin, or I don't know if I'm saying it right, Zain. I apologize.
Hey, Chip, what's going on? I just landed in DC, and then I saw you. I saw your beautiful message as usual. So I just wanted to check in and um, so it's like it was beautifully said that I'm just like you, Chip. I completely I'm happy for the Jewish people to, be having a safe place, you know, where they can live safely, but it shouldn't be at the expense of the Palestinian people. And we all know that. And just like you said it, if you studied the whole conflict and you are someone that is honest and really someone that really done their homework, it's obvious and it's clear that the Palestinian people have been oppressed in their own land, and their land has been stolen, right? And throughout the last 75 years, there has been atrocities and war crimes committed against the Palestinian people, right? Unfortunately, the mainstream media has been always ignoring the Palestinian side of the story, and now, up until October 7th, you would ask so many people in America if they knew Palestine prior to October 7th, and they will tell you no. We've never heard about Palestine. We've never heard about the name of Palestine. But now they are pro-Palestine, defending, supporting Palestine, and posting content on social media defending Palestine. So for decades, the media has been trying to not mention the name of Palestine. They've always talked about Palestinians as Arabs, and showing Israel, exposing Israel as a victim, right? So now, thanks to social media, that we have people like you, regular people like you, like me, like people who took their time in order to study and know what's really happening and just give this information to people, right? So now we have sorry. So now we have tens of millions of people around the world that, that have been fully educated and know exact. Yeah, I had an echo. So now we have tens of millions of people from all over the world that have been familiar with the conflict and are now fully educated and know about Palestine and what has been happening through social media. So people, please continue to learn. Please continue, most importantly, to speak up and educate the world about what's happening, right? And it is extremely important that we keep exposing. And the reason, again, we're talking about Palestine is that we are seeing the atrocities and the crimes that are committed in Palestine. Another reason that we're not really seeing what's happening in places like the Congo is because we don't really see what's happening there, right? They're stopping people from seeing what's happening there. Luckily and fortunately, we have people on the ground in Gaza, and that's why people are really seeing what's happening. So um, we should keep continue talking about Palestine and once Palestine is free, we will liberate the other places around the world. Thank you, and looking forward to seeing you in DC. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Are
so
you on the Are you
I
on the
joined
Telegram group?
I
You're on the
joined
Telegram group?
I joined the group.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I'll be looking into like just waiting for any messages that you send.
Okay, sounds good, Zane. Good to see you, man. Welcome.
Uh,
Glad safe travels too. I'll see you soon.
all right. Thank you. Bye. See ya.
Thanks, bro. Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.
Yeah, it's always nice to see. It's going to be so nice to meet some of these nice people. You know, we always have our internet friends, and then you get to see them in real life. It's always such an amazing joy, you know, to meet real people. Okay, so we have a number of people that are up here. Unfortunately, the person that was waiting, the Allah of Israel, I think it was named. He's not here. We have Abu, and then I think journalist Jeremy. No, Abu, Neith, and then journalist Jeremy, Gold, and Alejandro.
You, Chip.
Good, thanks.
I've been a viewer many times. I always like to see your videos. You're very logical and you have a great point of view. But these people, like, I won't repeat his name, the guy you just mentioned. A lot of these people are having very derogatory names that are towards people's religious views, and it's very disrespectful to even talk to these people. Like even their names itself doesn't even come from a normal standpoint, from someone who just wants to have a dialogue where you can exchange information and come to a conclusion. These people
Right.
have no reason. There are people without reason, and there are people you can't even have a discussion with.
Yeah, it's almost like saying Auschwitz of Israel or something like that. I mean, it's just totally inappropriate. I get it.
Yeah, they're absolute trolls. I hope I see you guys. I just joined the Telegram. I hope I see you guys in DC. I'm
Yeah,
driving there from New York.
cool.
My family and I, we're gonna be going over there. I just heard you say you haven't met any Palestinians, so I'm like, let me come up and introduce
Yeah,
myself, see if you have any questions. And I agree with what you were saying before, with the whole religious aspect of things. We don't care if someone worships a three-legged chicken. That's their business. Until their belief system imposes a threat onto mine, then I have an issue. But prior to that, whatever their belief is, they're free to believe and practice whatever it is that they want. They're trying to twist it, and the proof is in history. The proof is in history because if you Google the golden age of Judaism, it comes up between 711 to 1492, which is in the Iberian Peninsula before the Spanish Inquisition. For 800 years, they actually for 800 years, that is the golden age of Judaism. They had the most successful time of their life. And after the Muslims were expelled from that piece of land, after the Spanish Inquisition, the Jewish people followed them because they gave them a safe haven. Now, when you bring this up to Zios, they mention a jizya. A jizya is a tax of 2.5%. And by law, by Islamic law, Muslims must pay 2.5 to 5% as a Muslim from your entire salary to the poor and to other people. It's called zakat, Zakat. So it's only bringing everyone equally, but people who are non-Muslim used to pay a fraction of what Muslims were paying. So in reality, it's actually Muslims were paying more than non-Muslims. And if it was so bad for 800 years, the worst thing that happened to them was paying taxes, that's a pretty good deal. Because I don't know any way of getting away from taxes. We're paying 35% over here in the States. So, their strongest argument is that the worst thing that happened to them was taxes. And also another case I'd like to bring up is in the year 637 AD, after the fall of the Roman Empire in Palestine, once Omar ibn Khattab noticed that there were no Jewish people in the entire area. Please fact check me and look this up. There were no Jewish people over there. He personally went out and brought Jewish people to the neighborhood. He said, we respect all Abrahamic faiths, and we do not dismiss any they're all welcome to the land, in the year 637. So their claim to try to push a narrative, a false narrative of Muslim people being so against them is just crumbling on top of their head.
Yeah, it's a political movement. Let's face it. Let's be clear. Even the founder was not somebody who believed in God. So that just goes to show you the driving force. So
Absolutely.
all the history. I try to go back to like 1850 from there forward. That's kind of the history I like to look at, that window. We can go back as far as we want. I mean, heck, a dinosaur could show up at my house today and say I had to leave because they had the territory back in 21,000 BC or whatever the hell it was. So that's hard to get with. Yeah, if you go, are you a member of the January 13th protest group on Telegram?
No, I haven't joined. But I think no, your Telegram link on your profile.
If you go into my profile, it's got the
Yeah,
link tree, and then one of the links in my link tree, it says January 13th protest Telegram group.
yeah, I just joined that one actually. I
Okay,
just
cool. Yeah, that's where we're doing our get together talk, so we'll figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Of
And I
course.
just wanted to come up and say hello.
Yeah, I hope we get to see each other. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Chip. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I just checked the weather. It's supposed to be very, very windy and about 50 degrees or so. It'll probably be a little colder because of that. But a lot of people are supposed to be at this protest. If you don't know, I said it a second ago, January 13th, which is this Saturday in Washington, D.C., there's a huge, huge movement. It's going to be March for Gaza, and it's going to be very well attended. I mean, last time they had the protest, there weren't people coming in from all parts of the country. This time, people are coming in from everywhere, even internationally. So this thing's going to be huge. I think what's happened is the emotion of seeing this carnage play out on social media in front of the eyes of people. Everyone just has this visceral response of like, no, this is not okay. So I think that's just got a fire lit under so many people. And the fact that we've tried to contact our elected officials and we've watched them waffle and they say things in public, but then nothing changes. We try to call them, doesn't make an impact. People are like, enough. We're going to show you that we're had enough of this crap. Yeah, I'm going to be there. I have somebody who's coming in tomorrow who I offered my place up to for someone to stay because I live like an hour away. So we're going to go down there together and hopefully meet up a bunch of folks and have a great day of it. Okay. We have, I think I said Neith, and then journalist, then Gold, and then Alejandro.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I'm from Sudan. I live in California, North California.
Okay.
Thank you for supporting. It's very helpful when trying to say when someone from that's not typically a Middle Easterner, and he's from someone of Western country, supporting this cause of Palestine because they typically make this about they make it about there's a lot of Islamophobia. There is a lot of the Middle East is very uncivilized, Africa is very uncivilized, and things like that. So we really appreciate it. Being from Sudan myself, we have a lot of issues over there between the extremist groups and my dad is from Darfur, and a lot of issues over there, and so between Christians and Muslims. So and especially with the Palestine and Israel issue, they always say it is about religion. And if it was between Muslim and Muslim, they would have said it differently. But now, because it's between Jews and Muslims, so that now they are after Jews. The world is anti-Semitism and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's political. No one cares about other people's religion. Extremists do care. There are not many extremists in the world. There are extremist groups, but the normal people who are talking about this issue, they're not extremists, and they are, brainwashed by media, their household, and the politics. So yeah, and also a lot of people are saying things like Palestinians need to go to Arab country. No, they don't. I wouldn't leave Sudan for Palestine because there is another Sudanese of another religion that doesn't want me there. I wouldn't. He needs to leave. And Palestinians don't need to be refugees and have to leave their country. No. Arab countries, sure, there are tons of Arab countries, and Palestine is a Muslim country. Out of courtesy, they can welcome them, sure. But why make them refugees so that Israel should take their land more? You're trying
Right.
to create a narrative by saying that, look at Arab countries. They don't even like Palestinians. They're not welcoming them. No, foreign policy works a certain way. And by welcoming them, they are they will be indicating that, yeah, Palestinians need to leave out of Palestine, and then Israel it's Israel's land. No, people are not dumb, especially Gen Z. They read too much into it. Like they are different. They are live streaming their childbirth online. Like they are not going to listen to that outdated point of view. So I just wanted to say thank you, appreciate it. Being a person of color, that you come in and you develop this understanding of the conflict beyond religion, and really appreciate it. I always want to say that because it is really hard to think out of the box. It's really hard, and it's not like people don't intentionally do that, but it's extra nice to go out and try to really understand issues and spread good words. So yeah, I just wanted to come here and thank you for that.
You're welcome, and thanks for being here. I appreciate your point of view. And by the way, I hope things can improve in your home country of Sudan. I feel badly for what's happening.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure. Take care. Yeah, a lot of solidarity around the world, and it's based on principle, right? I think most people have a good bearing of what right and wrong is in their heart. They know better, right? It's, the old golden rule, like do unto others how you want people to, that whole thing. And no one would want to be on the losing end of a deal like what's happening in Israel-Palestine. And so if you look at it objectively with that in mind, I think you can't draw any other conclusion, just like many Israeli scholars have done who happen to be Jewish, or other people around the world who are Jewish. They can see this for what it is. They can put aside their own allegiances, their own tribe, so to speak, and see it for what it is. And I think most people have the ability to do that if they're offered the full information. But most people don't get the full information, and that's the problem. So, hello, user 3013 Robert, how you doing? Okay. We have other guests that are in here. We have journalist Jeremy, and then Gold, and then Alejandro and Tony. I'm glad we got a lot of guests today. This is great. It takes a lot of the burden off of me. This is beautiful.
Hey, Chip, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to talk because I really resonate, especially with some of the last little points you were making, which, I grew up Jewish, still consider myself Jewish, relatively religious, but more importantly, I was raised in an incredibly Zionist household. Okay. Went to a very Zionist elementary school and preschool, where IDF soldiers used to come and sort of make us promise more or less that we'd join the IDF when we got older. And, for a long time, I sort of harbored a lot of animosity for Palestinians, a lot of animosity for the Arab world in general. And it took a lot of work to sort of get myself out of that headspace. Started with, meeting Palestinians and unlike-minded folks in college. And then I ended up reading Noura Erakat's Justice for Some, which really opened my eyes up. If anyone is looking for reading, I really recommend Justice for Some, and I really recommend Rashid Khalidi's The 100 Years' War on Palestine. I think both of those books are incredibly informative, I think, even for Zionist folks like I was. I think it portrays information in a very useful and straightforward way. But what I kind of wanted to talk about was, I find since October 7th and before, because I've sort of been screaming about this topic for a while now, just because I grew up and I felt very lied to when I sort of came into my own understanding of Israel-Palestine, is that I feel, as a Jewish person, a little bit wary to center my Judaism in these conversations, Because I don't think it's that important, and I think it buys into Israel's conflation of Zionism and Judaism as a useful sort of political strategy. But B, because I think it decenters the people that really deserve to be centered, which is namely Palestinian folks who have had their homes and livelihoods stripped away from them for over 75 years now. But then I always get back to the point where it's like as a Jewish person, I'm being forced into the sort of limelight by Zionist folks. So I figure I should lean into the apostate posture, more or less, and use my position as a Jewish person to raise awareness in ways that non-Jewish folks may feel self-conscious about. As my name implies, I'm a journalist. So I'm a journalist in Southern California, and I work for a broadcast company. And I've done a lot of stories now on the local response about what's happening in Israel and Palestine. And I think the only reason they're letting me do that is because I'm Jewish. There's a lot of other folks who I think are interested in covering the topic that are either too scared, that they don't know enough, that they'll be marked as an anti-Semite. But, you know, I think I just wanted to sort of air out the sort of struggle and tension I've been feeling as a Jewish person that obviously does not align with the sort of Zionist regime, in that I don't want to center Judaism, and I don't think that Judaism should be centered in any of this. But at the same time, it is centered. It is centered by Israel, and we should be using our identities as Jewish people to fight for what we think is right. And anyway, I mean, I'm also interested to understand your position as somebody, I think you mentioned that you came from the armed forces, as to like the pedagogical like underpinnings of attitudes toward Israel inside of the armed forces. I know that you mentioned that the first Intifada, a presentation about the first Intifada was really when you got your eyes opened. But can you tell us a little bit more about like what your understanding of the conflict was before that?
Yeah. By the way, thank you for being as open-minded as you are, and for being willing to have the courage to accept the lumps and bumps that come with, you know, at least speaking out in whatever degree you do about the issue. I think that's very admirable. A lot of people in the comments were saying as much. So thank you for doing that, by the way. And so in the military, if you don't know, if those of you haven't been in the military, politics are not welcome in any way, shape, or form. The reason being, they don't want people questioning the chain of command on up to the president and the military brass. If you get given a mission, even if you disagree with it politically, it's your duty as a person who's either enlisted in or commissioned in the army to follow out the mission. So the command structure, if they catch wind of anybody talking politics, they put the kibosh on it pretty fast. So I didn't talk much about this issue with my fellow soldiers because, first of all, most of them could care less. They had different ideas about, you know, I was 21 years old, maybe 22 when I was in the situation. What are most 22-year-olds concerned about? They want to go out, have fun, you know, meet other people, you know, have a good time with younger people and maybe drink alcohol or whatever people do. And that's their main focus, right? Having a good time when they're not working, not studying stuff like, you know, most people who are 22 aren't on, at least in my group, aren't on things like this if it were to exist. So, so that's pretty much the deal. I think in the military, it's a very strange, controlling environment. You don't have First Amendment rights in the military, just so you know. That doesn't fly. You can't claim constitutional privilege when it comes to the command structure. They're like, nope, different world here, Lieutenant, which is what I was. So hope that answers your question. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's fair. And I'll go after this. But I think another thing that I've been sort of struggling with is I think I am a naturally pretty optimistic person by nature. Sort of hope springs eternal, which has, you know, been very useful in my time covering politics and global events. But at the same time, I think historical analysis and understanding of, you know, the way conflicts usually unfold, leads me to understand that, you know, even if the quote unquote right side ends up victorious at the end, that will come at the cost, like unimaginable cost of innocent people, which it already has. So I'm wondering from your perspective, about how you go about balancing sort of hope for the future and a historical analysis of like, man, this is just not going to go well for so many people.
That's a good question. I mean, when you study this thing, the one common theme that I can draw from is that unfortunately, things have only gotten worse over the decades for Palestinians, as crazy as that may sound, because initially being dispossessed of your land is traumatic enough. But I think this is why I think the Israelis are not being smart about what they're doing. And again, I want to see everybody be as safe and productive and happy as they can be. That's the goal of all of this. But it needs to be with dignity, right? So if you look at the way that there's an indignity being perpetrated by the, you know, all the regimes, all the different prime ministerships since, you know, the 70s have been the same in terms of the same slow but steady progression with settlements and basically mistreatment during the occupation of Palestinians. And of course, you know, the people in Gaza are a little more fired up and want to resist. So in 2005, it was just untenable to maintain the settlements, so they were withdrawn. But the underlying theme of oppression and encroachment on Palestinian territory, at least that which is perceived by Palestinians to be theirs, you know, the preemptive war of 1967 under dubious reasons like the WMD for the Americans, to take over the territory, UN Resolution 242. It's just been an ongoing slog. Here's where I think the Israelis hurt themselves. They do things despite international condemnation because they think like, well, we can just do it because we have the political cover and the financial backing of the United States. And to some extent, they've been right about that. That's been their calculus, and that's what's happened. So it's irrefutable, and they've been able to build out this system of, you know, basically apartheid systems in the West Bank where they have separate roads, separate towns, separate villages, different water rights. You know, it just goes on down the line. So I'm disappointed insofar as I think that peace would serve the population of Israel far better than these ongoing policies of dispossession and further encroachment and just, you know, I call it immiseration of the Palestinian people. And I think the goal of that is to get them to break and leave, just like we're hearing about the previous person who contacted us from Sudan said that they want people to go and leave the territories to go to other, quote, Arab countries. But I think the Arab countries remain steadfast for multiple reasons. One, it's tough to take a huge influx of immigrants in any case, but more so, they don't want to be the people who acquiesce to the Israeli goals, the Zionist goal of pushing people out, right? So by them not accepting that as a path, they kind of force the Israelis' hand. And I think that's the point of all this. Now, what we've seen recently in terms of the response to the 10/7 attacks, I think are really not in Israel's interest. And I think it's not even the Israeli people per se that wanted it to go to this extent. I think some proportional response was expected and should be, because even though Israel is the occupying and blockading power, you know, when you get smacked in the face, the first thing you want to do is smack somebody back, no matter how the dynamic is. I get that. But you can't make the argument from the Israeli side. And many are doing that, but I don't think you can with, not being disingenuous, that they're going after the H group. There's not been a very surgical approach. We know from what they did in Lebanon, recently in Beirut, they took out an H group member with a very precise Hellfire missile fired by a drone. They got the second story of a building precisely where he was based on intelligence. That's not what we've been seeing in Gaza. Let's face it, the entire northern half of Gaza has been obliterated for the most part. You know, many thousands of residential structures are either damaged or destroyed. It's unlivable, right? It's uninhabitable. And I think that was by design. And who knows what the rationale was for what happened, whether it was done completely out of the blue and was a security lapse, or whether there was some other reason why it happened or was quote unquote allowed to occur. Who knows? But I did a video a while back called Cui Bono, and it looked at who at the time benefited. And if you look at what's happening with Netanyahu, he's facing a very bleak future if he steps down as prime minister. As we all know, he's got huge corruption charges that may land him in prison for the rest of his life. And you look at the unrest that was going on vis-a-vis the struggle with the Supreme Court, which has now subsided, obviously. But at the time, it was a big deal. And there were people out in the streets, I'm assuming many of whom believe, like you do, that they didn't want to have a single group of people in the highest levels of power consolidate even more of it. So that's kind of my answer. And I think what is the Israelis are doing, they're basically stabbing themselves in the foot right now by what they're doing. We're seeing blowback from the international community with what's happening this morning at the ICJ. Tomorrow, the Israelis get to present their case. Today, South Africa presented theirs. Very, very strong allegations against a very specific set of behaviors and intent that's been publicly expressed by leaders that if they were smart, they'd shut the hell up and just do what they wanted to do without saying it. You don't have to say it to do it. So I think there's just this arrogance and this ongoing inertia of being able to get away with things. And eventually that kind of arrogance usually comes back to bite you no matter what the circumstances are. I think we lost our caller. So thanks for being here. And by the way, if you hear this, if you can still hear me, I think you were on the previous panel that had the young lady who has an Israeli Australian dual citizenship. Please follow me and I'll follow you back. I'd love to have you on in either extended conversation about your experiences of how you went from where you were growing up to where you've gotten to, because I think those are important to show other people a path from that. And there's been some recent videos where people have talked about how they broke from the Zionist mentality. I find it very interesting. But by the way, congratulations to you for where you've gotten to. Okay, I think we had Gold was next, and then Tony. And then I don't remember the rest of the order, but I think Alejandro, and then there'll be others. So, I know, listen, sometimes you have to wait a while. I apologize. There's 6 people in the queue. I will get you as fast as I can. I'll try to get people 5 or 6 minutes and we'll go from there. Oh, there we go. Gold. So what's on your mind?
Coffee. Hi there. Thank you so much for having me, first of all, and hello to everybody in the chat. So I really do appreciate your live, and it's given the conflict and everything that's going on, so much division, it's refreshing to hear from experienced people like yourself and intelligent men. And not only do you have the intelligence, but you have that humanity, right? And you have that caring in you, which there's so many arguments going on where we're not hearing that from people. There's laughing and mocking. And to me, it's just very hard to understand, because no matter who you're loyal to or who you may agree with or disagree with, there should be some common ground when it comes to the topic of 30,000 unalived people, right? That's kind of a pill that's hard to swallow when that's something that's laughed at or mocked at. There's a huge lack of humanity, and I think that this whole rhetoric against the Islam nation is definitely to blame. Now, given this is not a religious conflict, I think that's kind of how they're trying to swing it. We understand on the Palestinian side that there's a difference between, the Jewish followers and the Jewish people, which I believe in whole are good people. We are not trying to blame or anything of that nature, but this is more an issue with the Zionist movement, the ideology, and the political movement, which has caused this dangerous situation for the Palestinians for how many years. The other point I want to make here is that I'd be rich right now if I had $1 for every time October 7th was mentioned, right? Now we have to look at the root cause of the problem, which is not October 7th. Respectfully, a lot of people are not educated on the conflict, or they don't know better. And I've even been reading people here admitting, wow, I feel like I've been lied to. I knew nothing. Now I'm finally learning what's really been happening, why this is happening. So we can't just focus on an outcome such as October 7th. We really have to go dig deeper and search for the root cause. I made a example yesterday. I couldn't think of anything on the fly, which was kind of an analogy. Go along with me here. If you have a bad tooth, an infected tooth, and you're just trying to smear Orajel all over it, but the root cause goes way back, right? And you got to get it extracted. So I think it's just illiterate to kind of focus on October 7th as the problem, because that's not where it began. There were countless massacres since 48. There was 750,000 people displaced, illegal settlements, unalivings, petty treatment and harassment, just taking away their dignity as a people, controlling the food, the water. Just imagine horrible living conditions that I think any human in their right mind would resist to that. They would be sick of that. They don't know any other life. As humans, I think we yearn for freedom. We yearn for our human rights. That's something that we are always going to yearn for, and we're going to want. So that's kind of my take. And another huge argument is the age group and eradicating the age group, which in my opinion, and I think you'll agree, as somebody experienced in the Army, that could have certainly been taken care of via some type of special operation if that was truly your goal. But this is a mass collective on the populace, unarmed civilians. I think it's out of anger, it's out of retaliation, and it's against international law. But we all understand that right now there's this, I feel that there's this idea that they're above the law. I've literally been arguing with people about like the Geneva Convention and the human rights and the international laws, and how they feel that they're truly above that and that they're justified in what they're doing, which is just, that's just crazy to me. I can't agree with that. I think what everybody's doing, like you and everybody else with the protests, with spreading the word, pardon me, educating people, we're going to save lives. We can't bring back all the people that have lost their life, unfortunately, due to the conflict. But I think we're headed in the right direction for justice. And I hope that their land will be restored and the people will be free, because this is just going on like how many years of oppression and pain and unaliving. How much more can these people take? It's just too much. It's just absolutely pure evil.
Yeah, well put. By the way, there's some maintenance men that came into my place. I don't know if people saw yesterday, but I talked about this big bubbling up of sewage came up, or not sewage, but like brown water from my sink. It was pretty nasty. In fact, I'll put a picture in the background so you can see it. It looks like somebody found oil underneath my apartment. It was pretty gross, but sorry about the background noise. I'll mute when I bring people up. So yeah, very well said. Thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciate what you had to say. Very articulate, very well put, and 100% on the dot. Thank you very much for coming up. Okay, we have Alejandro, and then Tony, and then Ariel.
Say hi to you, Chip.
Hey.
Who called you a weird name? Chippy?
Yeah, that's not a name that I don't like to be called that.
Yeah, but who did it? Who called you that name? You mentioned a lady. Anyways, no. It's not important. I like your name. I went on like 2 lives, right? Because I went on with Miss Shekels because Eric Warsaw was feeling sick, right? And there's this lady by the name of PG, right? And she was talking about that she's got dual citizenship, Mexican and Israelite, but she doesn't live in Mexico. And she was talking about, and the other host, that the Israel goal was to kick all the Palestinians out. And I asked her, and where are they gonna go? Into the ocean? You can only swim like 3 or 5 minutes. They're like, if they don't get out of Israel land, that they were gonna make everybody a slave. Oh, and I went off on the girl. I go, what do you mean, a slave? Yeah, we will make them a slave. I go, you're Mexican and you're saying this? That just because you're Mexican and Zionist, because, well, Israelite, they wanted to make every Palestinian a slave, whether they liked it or not, right? And then they started talking about why they hated Palestinians, because the age group was unaliving, and I gotta say the R word, R-A-P-E, raping every Israelite women they came across. I go, you got evidence of that? I go, because your propaganda machine is not working out. With a world and millions of people, we don't believe that the age group was doing that, okay? Because we all believe that there are resistance, like you mentioned it. There's no other word to describe the age group but a resistance. I go, look, my girl, I got dual citizenship, the United States one and the Mexican. And let me tell you something. Mexico still is under slavery because there's only rich and the poor. So who suffers? The poor. And who gets enlightened? The rich. So you're basically a slave of your own device. I go, how come you don't live in Mexico? Oh, we went off at it when she said that their wish was to slave every Palestinian. I go, well, I'll tell you what. Mexico can take them. Maybe Egypt, no. They're like, no, Egypt won't take them. Where are we going to send all these people? And it was just, I got a headache because this mentality that they had was just pure evil and disgraceful for a human being. I go, you know what? You disgust me by saying that you're Mexicans, because the Mexicans were not like that. And you're saying you're Mexican Zionist Israelite. You're trying to enslave. We've been trying to fight, like you said, you talk like after 1860, right? And this woman is trying to bring slavery back. I go, you're gonna fail. The whole world is against you, and you're not gonna succeed. And I gave her a deadline. I go, by June, this war is gonna be over, and the whole world is gonna think, really think, and they've been thinking. So you're not gonna be welcome. I'm not gonna welcome you in Mexico, girl. And I had to go off on it, which, you know, I'm not somebody that wants to kick somebody out. And I started telling them. So you mean you're either gonna unalive all the people or make them your slaves? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, you know, your mentality is so wrong that you make me sick. And she did make me sick that I had to go run to the bathroom. I had to just get out of their life. I just wanted to see what their mentality is. And there's a lot of racist Zionists. They go on live. They got their own TikTok page, and I can't believe that in 2024 we still hear people wanting to slave people. You know how ridiculous that idea is. I go, and you think they're not gonna put a resistance? They're not gonna. And I had to tell her, a lot of my ancestors that fought the federals, they like Zapata said, I'd rather die standing up than on my knees. So the Palestinian people would rather die standing up than on their knees. You see that the ideology of their concept of trying to make all the Palestinian slave? It's not gonna work, girl. You're gonna lose. And I had to tell her, the remaining years that I got, I'm gonna fight against your little mentality you got, because I call it little. Oh, I had like 6, 7, 8 hosts telling me what I was gonna die of. And I'm like, I already know what I'm gonna die of. You don't need to tell me. You guys are unaliving people, already telling the whole world. How you gonna get rid of a whole race? You tell me that. Who wants to get rid of a whole race? Are you guys stoned or what? Because if you get stoned, you think more clearly. And I lost my cool so bad that I woke up I went to sleep I didn't even go to sleep because I got like 20 minutes.
Wow.
But yeah, that's the mentality that the other TikTokers, there's a Captain something, there's
Captain Jonathan.
Yeah. Have you heard his their hosts, how they talk?
Bad. It's bad. Yeah, what I want to say is I've noticed this over and over again. And not that it's perfectly this way, but most of the people I've contacted or had contact with who are pro-Israel or very hardcore Zionists, they're incredibly mean-spirited. They talk over you. They don't answer questions. They're rude. They're arrogant. They're just everything you don't want to have in a human being, and they're superior in their thinking, and they think that they use words like them and they in a very condescending way. And by the way, if those of us who are talking about the issue use that same language towards the Jewish community, they'd be outraged.
Exactly.
Right?
Uh-huh. They use the name of the Palestinians being nothing. What do you mean you're gonna call a human being nothing? And I'm like, are you really a human to call another human you're nothing? How weird is that? I mean, what do you? And there was another girl that she was I think I forgot where what life it was. She was Jewish, and she was talking about that they indoctrinate the Zionists when you go to elementary school. How cruel is that? When they already start poisoning your mind as a 6, 7, 8-year-old child. How worse can it get? When you start telling a little child that you gotta hate other races and that you're the chosen and nobody is worth a crap. I'm like, you know what? I'm glad I grew up in the Americas, not being indoctrinated. I grew up in Mexico and the United States, where they told me you got a decision, and either you take the left side or the right side, and they gave me how do you say that word? They gave me choose. There's many religions. Which one you want? Take it. You want to take the other religion? Use it. You don't want to believe it? Don't believe in it. You want to believe in a rock? Go ahead, take a shot at it. If it makes you happy, like the song, if it makes you happy, we all right. But no,
we made some great points. We have 5 or 6 people that are
yeah.
You made some great points. Thank you for coming on. And I'm sorry, by the way, that people are behaving in such a way that it makes people feel denigrated. And why should the state of Mexico have to absorb refugees that are being forced out by a bunch of people who think they're superior and they want to expel people from their own indigenous territory? It's so arrogant. It's so short-sighted. It makes me angry to hear that.
That's what they want. That's what they were talking about. This other host, their main topic was, we kick them into the sea or Egypt takes them. And I'm like, you're not gonna kick nobody out because they belong there. They got the same right and reason to exist just like you.
You're right. Okay, Alejandro, thank you very much for your point of view. I appreciate you.
I just wanted to.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, I've got to make some room. Yeah, it's very discouraging to hear people on any part of any situation speak that way. It's very arrogant. It's very racist. It's very superiority thinking. It's not good, right? I don't think we admire that quality, especially with this is the ultimate irony that I try to communicate with what happened in Europe in the late 1930s, early 1940s. We know from historical lesson that style of thinking is completely unacceptable, right? And it happened to the forefathers of their families, and they look at that as historical, never again, like this huge blow to their people, which is understandable. And yet they're now enacting the very policies that were the initial stages of what we saw happening in Europe, which is just, it's it's tragic irony is what it is. It's tragic. So I think we all agree on that. We do have 4 guests in the queue. Next was Tony. Then we have Ariel. Then we have Tariq and Barry, if you stick around. There was Paul and then Paula. Okay, try to hold me to that if I can remember. So Tony, how you doing? Welcome back.
Hey Chip, how are you?
Doing well, sir. What's on your mind?
I'm good, and thanks again for giving us this platform to learn, as well as educate others on what they need to know and what they've learned incorrectly, if you will. And I want to start out by saying thank you and God bless you to South Africa. they really did a great job laying out its case against Israel to the ICJ. I also think that it's really sad that no Arabs or Muslim countries were the ones to bring forth the case. That really, as a Palestinian and as a Muslim, really kind of hurts my feelings. My question, I guess, or questions, are in regard to what we heard today, and you know, the whole case in front of the ICJ is what impact, first of all, do you think that it's going to have on the West Bank? Because it was specific to Gaza, and I know that they made reference to Palestine as a whole. And I guess my second question would be, given the reality that whatever judgment, if you will, may be handed down, it doesn't really matter, I guess, from an enforceable standpoint. So how do you see this playing out in terms of time? I guess, you know, like how long will it take to get to some sort of ceasefire and the entering of humanitarian aid? And how do you see Israel responding to this? You know, earlier you mentioned the arrogance, and that's always been what has gotten them in trouble throughout history. If you think about it, they've always gotten to a point of arrogance, and that's always backfired on them. When I'm in other chats and you listen to the Zios as they respond to what I consider to be valid arguments, the response, I guess, is always manipulation. I mean, you know the playbook: manipulation, gaslighting, deflection, and then lies, and more lies by the Zios, or just spewing venom. Clearly, they're racist, and they have an undeniable superiority complex. But whereas on the other hand, and I just can't tell you how refreshing it is when you listen to what I refer to as my beautiful Jewish cousins promoting peace and coexistence between Israel and the Palestinians. And I guess there's a shared vision of leaving this world a better place for our children, a place that's peaceful and free of hate. So I guess I know I said a lot, but just I'll keep it specific towards like the time frame. Like, how long do you see before this actually has some sort of impact on what's going on, and what do you see the actual response being in your opinion?
Let me take that offline, okay, Tony? Thanks for the question. I really appreciate that. Thanks for being here. Okay, so the ICJ, for those of you who don't know, it's a court just like the ICC, but it's directly related with the UN. It is nothing that's going to have teeth in terms of enforceability. So, for example, let's just say, for example, that there's convictions brought on all charges, just for sake of argument. The problem is like any other law in the world, you can convict somebody in absentia. The leaders who are being charged from Israel, and I don't remember if there's any charges for any sort of collusion from the U.S. or, you know, co-responsibility. But once you get a conviction, it's sort of a stain on your record. It's an international condemnation, just like UN 242 would be. But then you got the enforceability part, right? And if one of those leaders who's named in the case who gets convicted were to travel to a country that's a signatory, then they could be arrested theoretically. In many cases, for political reasons, it doesn't happen. A good example is Vladimir Putin, who's been there's a warrant out for his arrest from the international community, but he's been to some African nations that are signatories, but they didn't arrest him because it creates a political storm, right? So there's unlikely to be any sort of punishment, at least at this point. But it does further show that the world is condemning what they're seeing, which is a good thing. Now, you differentiate between the West Bank and Gaza. Obviously, the worst of what we're seeing in terms of the loss of human life has been in Gaza. So therefore, that's where a lot of the focus has been. But in my lifetime, the amount of unaliving that's been taking place and dispossession of property and, you know, horrific mistreatment of Palestinians at this moment is the worst it's been since the Nakba in the West Bank, by far. Something like 300 people have been unalive, which is a lot for the West Bank, other than when there's protests for the right of return. So this is sort of unprecedented time, and I think the Israelis are using the fact that this is all going on in Gaza and all the eyes are there for the most part to do what they're doing, kind of ramp up the speed of their normal operations. But either way, it's very unfortunate that these international bodies don't have teeth. I think we'd all love to see people who deserve to be behind bars and punished for the rest of their lives be punished, right? It's the right thing to do. But unfortunately, morality doesn't always play the first decision-making point in these international politics. In fact, usually it's somewhere way down the line, unfortunately. So great questions, Tony. As far as when I see this thing ending, unfortunately, it's when either the U.S. puts so much pressure on the Israeli government that they're required to stop by threat of withdrawal of aid, and or when the Netanyahu regime decides they want to. And they've made it clear publicly, at least at this point, that they don't see any end in sight. Now, the question is, where will humanitarian corridors or aid fit into that longer projected exercise and conflict? We don't know that yet. What we do know is what's happened so far. We do know there's a lot of high, expensive bribes that have to be paid, even to get aid in. There's people profiteering off the aid, which is disgusting. But the Israelis are controlling the inspections and the passage and the quantity of aid, and they're being very strict. If there's one item that's not on the allowable list, they'll turn the whole truck around. It's not ideal, right? But it is what it is. Right now, the Israelis kind of hold all the power, as they have for decades. And it disgusts me, but at the same time, barring some sort of military intervention, which could get the United States involved and the Iranians, it could blow up into a regional or even global conflict, which I don't think anybody wants. So again, the Palestinian people have to just ride it out and endure the onslaught of the Israeli machine, which is tragic, right? Okay, we have a number of people still in the queue. I think next we had Ariel, and then Tariq, and then Paula, then Barry.
Hi, Tim. Good evening.
Good evening, or hello, good day here. Good evening, wherever you are.
Hi. I'll present myself first. I'm an Israeli. I'm living on the land. You will not find me arrogant or being supremacist, and I will always be polite. Okay?
Great.
And I think it will be easier for me to communicate with you personally than other lives because first of all, I think I'm close to your age. Secondly, I have a military background, obviously like you, and I have an open mind as well. Okay? And I'd like to touch some bullet points. It might not make sense to connect them all, but I'd like to touch some bullet points. I'd like to touch, firstly, I've seen many comments in your live that Israel wants to expand Zionism to neighbors' countries and so forth. So I'd like to take 1973, Yom Kippur, as an example. Israel was attacked unprovoked by Egypt and Syria. We can agree on that. At the end of this war cycle, with the negotiation of Henry Kissinger, then Secretary of State, Israel forces were 30 kilometers away from Alexandria and 40 kilometers away from Damascus. So obviously we did not want to conquer Syria, we did not want to conquer Egypt, and we do not want to conquer any country. That's one bullet point that I want to make. If you can confirm that regarding the facts, I'll appreciate. I cannot hear you.
I'm going to let you continue on. I'm going to let you continue on. Keep on going with what you want to say.
Okay. Another bullet point that I want to make. I feel bad for any human life taken, honestly.
Okay.
But I think it's a bit of an hypocrisy to name Israel as the only one that does that. King Hussein, King of Jordan, at 1971, unalived 25,000 Palestinians in one day after they murdered the Jordanian prime minister. And I didn't hear anyone screaming on that. The age group was established as a charity group in the beginning because they belong to the Muslim Brotherhood, which are outlawed in Egypt. That's why Egypt doesn't want them back. From Jordan, they moved to Beirut, to Lebanon, and they colonized there, joined El Amal, which is a Shiite group. And the result of that was murdering Bashir Jumayr, the Christian prime minister. So trying to portray the Palestinian people along the years, including Yasser Arafat as well, as freedom fighters only, I doubt it. Regarding corruption, you mentioning here, or your panel mentioning here, that Bibi Netanyahu, which by the way, I do not support him at all. He faces corruption. I'm sure he would, by the way. But if you look at what Yasser Arafat, the head of the PLO in the West Bank, receiving hundreds of millions of dollars from countries like Sweden, Norway, and so forth, you can look at his wife, Suha Arafat, in Paris bank account. The hundreds of millions are there. Moving to the age group leaders, which I am certain that if I will ask 90% of your panel or of Eric Warsaw panel who they are, I'm sure they would not even know who they're following. But Ismail Hania, Muhammad Dev, Khaled Mash'al, Marwan Isa, Ghazi Hamid, I'd like to know where they are. Ismail Hania sits with $5.2 billion account. His son has shown invoices over social networks of buying diamonds of thousands of dollars to the total. Ismail Hania is flying with his private jet from Qatar. Razi Hamid is sitting somewhere in Lebanon taking a speech, hate speech, over and over and over and over in the BBC currently, that we will do the 7th of October, graping, unaliving all Jews over and over. Yahya Sinwar, that everybody thinks he's the greatest guy upon earth.
Let me do this. I've given you more than 3 minutes to talk. Let me just break in for 1 second. Don't want to stop you because you're bringing up legitimate points. Let me first say, I 100% agree with you that the corruption and the current leadership of the PA as well, which was the PLO before, is indefensible. Okay, what Yasser Arafat did to take funds and squirrel them away, as well as the leaders currently of the H group, you're not going to get anybody to dispute that from me. That's the way that leadership works in many countries. There's corruption among many leaders. Doesn't make it right for what the Palestinian leadership has done, but it's not unusual. Let's be straight. The guy Zelensky, who was the recipient of billions of dollars from the United States, the Ukrainian war effort, his wife was in Paris and Beverly Hills buying all sorts of crap that was with hundreds of thousands of dollars. It just, leaders do this crap. I don't know why. I mean, I guess they can. That's why they do it. They're corrupt, let's face it. So they're looking out for themselves more than their people. The 1973 war, there's different interpretations of that. Again, when you say the word unprovoked or, it was a surprise attack, but whether it was unprovoked or not, listen, when Israel was formed in 1948, Arab nations tried to intervene, right? They didn't think it was fair and they didn't think it was in their interest to have the establishment of a Jewish state in the region. I get that. Might that have included anti-Semitism? Perhaps. There's always going to be some people who have hard feelings towards others that aren't them. We see it indicated inside of Israeli leadership and many people who support the settlers, for example, that come from different places. They tend to be that way, right? It doesn't make the fact that the H group or members of them who had stated it initially in their 1988 charter or in the 2017 revised charter, that hatred is despicable, but it works on all angles, right? Anybody who has that in their heart. But there's plenty of people in Israel that have that in their heart, unfortunately. Most that don't, I would argue. So you're talking about other points about these different things that are in a relationship. The key thing that people from Israel don't point out, and I agree, you're saying that the Palestinians aren't cupcakes because of the other things they've done to establish movements throughout the region to try to further their reach in terms of their objectives. I don't disagree with that. And that they've used unconventional, you can label them as T-word tactics, very hardline tactics that have been extremely disruptive to Israeli way of life and the peace and security of the Israeli people. No disagreement there. Then I got to put in the however part, which I don't want to be, always whataboutism. But you talked about the fact that these leaders, these leaders that came to power in the H group, how did they come to power? I did a video about this. Their families and their neighbors, and they were all massacred by Israeli troops that were returning from battle. If you look at the video that I made, you'll see the history of that. And that's normal for people to want to get back at those who hurt their people, just like is happening right now in Israel. Let's face it, much of what's going on is not towards the stated mission publicly. This is a retaliation that's taken a way disproportionate shape and under the guise of having to rectify the H group problem, so to speak, in terms of long-term security and the future of what happens in Gaza. They've used that as a cover to basically go in and indiscriminately bomb tons and tons and tons of residential structures, hospitals, ambulances. I mean, it could go down the line. It's despicable what the Israelis have done. You may not even agree with it. I'll ask you the question. A lot of people in Israel do. They think that the people of Gaza deserve whatever the hell they get. But how does that affect what's going on in the West Bank, for example? How is it that the actions in the West Bank, where there's not a significant militant presence, let's be clear, and the way that the Abbas, PA deals with Israel, a lot of people in West Bank disagree with the fact that they've acquiesced so much power and they're kind of playing along with the Israeli way of wanting to handle things. I tend to agree with that point of view. So I understand the anger. But ultimately, what underlies all of this, in terms of the underlying common denominator, the fabric that weaves everything together, is the plight of Palestinians to have autonomy and have independence and freedom, right? They want to get out from under occupation and the blockade. Not that they're going to be perfect. And I understand Israeli security concerns. They're valid. Okay, so maybe there can't be a peaceful coexistence. Some people make that argument. I don't think that's accurate because it was that way for the most part for generation after generation in historic Palestine. Now, were there actions that took place on both sides in terms of supremacist Jewish groups under groups like the Irgun under Ben Gurion? Yeah. Were there massacres of other Jewish people? And what really changed that dynamic, just so you know, is for those of you who don't know, there was a very small population of ethnic indigenous Jewish people from Palestine in the beginning of, let's say, 1880. And over time, as the Zionist movement caught steam, many more Jewish people from around the world emigrated from their country, immigrated into historic Palestine. It was only when the balance of population started to shift dramatically that there were problems, much like we're seeing in the United States right now with respect to immigration. It's becoming out of control. We're seeing examples of it in Europe constantly. It just creates tension. It creates violence, right? That's normal. It's the way it happens. So I don't believe it's impossible, but I do believe in the face of what the choices have been from Israel over the course of the years. And by the way, I'm coming up on my conclusion because I don't want to be an air hog. I'm going about 3 minutes too. I do believe that it all goes back to the historical injustice of 1948, which, let's be fair, if it happened to Jewish people that lived in the same territory, it would have been unfair, especially within the context of the historical mistreatment of Jewish people throughout the millennia, including what happened horrifically in World War II. So I think there'd be screaming bloody murder from the mountaintops if it would have happened to Jewish people, but it just so happened to be a Jewish state that was created. And unfortunately, the Arab, mostly Muslim population was forced out of their territory. So that's the injustice. All the subsequent things the Israelis have done have not been a path to peace. And they've not been good faith actors, in my opinion. Not that the Palestinians are perfect, and not that there couldn't have been some acceptance of some deals, but unfortunately, none of them included full freedom and autonomy and self-determination and dignified respect. I'll let you continue and I'll mute my side. Oops, sorry, I don't want to disconnect you.
Firstly, thank you for Thank you for your approach. You are very different from other lives of any pro-Palestinians that are talking over, firstly, and secondly, spreading lies and in a matter of really propaganda. As you realize, I do not spread any propaganda. I take the bullet points. So I'd like to put 2 more bullet points and then maybe drop to the end of the line to continue with you. One bullet point is that there were 2 different governments in Israel. that made peace. One was the right-wing party by the Likud that made peace with Egypt by Begin on one side and President Anwar Sadat on the other side. Then Rabin, which is the Labour Party, made peace with Jordan in 1994. So to portray Israel as a one unity over unaliving with intention, I think it's completely inaccurate, not fair, and that's not the right way to go over for the peace. What I'm trying to say is, whoever wants peace with us will get it. Period. I can guarantee you that. Honestly, if Israel would have understood that the motive behind attacking Israel citizens only since 2005, firing rockets on Israel cities only, not on any army base. If Israel would have understood that this is not the intention, and this is, by the way, a continuous intention, not just by age group now. I'm talking since 2005. And ever since then, you, as a military guy, would understand that all the operations that went on in and out ever since was operation. It was like what it's called so-called ceasefire in between. But it was never like now. On 7th of October, something else happened. And I don't want to go into that because it's really painful for everyone. And if any of your viewers think that South Africa is the representative, I will dedicate my last bullet point to that. But regardless, Israel is going to present tomorrow that video or part of the video, which no one will be able to dispute it because it's coming from world-known pathologists of what happened to certain individuals, victims of the age group on the 7th of October. And it will be an horrific evidence of raping, beheading, burning bodies. You will see it tomorrow. I wish it would have never seen any human eye, but it will be shown. And the last point that I want to make, it is quite an hypocrisy. I was employed by IBM. Sorry. I think I think. Chief, I cannot hear you.
Sorry about that. I always mute myself. What I was trying to say was, I apologize. I can't remember all the points somebody makes when they make like 6 or 7. So I want to make sure I'll address one that I think is important to address. And then I'll bring you back up to finish your thought about the ICJ and what we're seeing. Now, first of all, just to talk about that for 1 second. I'm glad, even though I don't like to have disgusting situations displayed with physical evidence. It's a good thing, though, when the allegations are made and there's an absence of a release to the public of evidence. It's good to have a reliable third party acknowledge the video evidence. I know there's been some presentations of certain leaders and certain members of the journalist community, but it hasn't fully shown the extent of the allegations. If there is video that does substantiate that, I'm horrified to hear about it, but I'm glad that someone will see it so they can let the public know. Going back to what you talked about, the peace treaties. So I'm very glad that Israel was able to reach agreements. Begin and Sadat got together along with the American President Jimmy Carter, and they were able to work something out to rectify that problem with the peace treaty. If you look at what happened in Jordan, I agree. Again, I'm glad that Israel's been able to reach peace with people like the UAE. I'm all for peace agreements, but it doesn't change the negotiation stance vis-a-vis the PLO and now the Palestinian Authority / I guess the H group's been marginalized. So it just because different agreements were reached with others doesn't mean that Israel has negotiated the same way in good faith with Palestinians. My opinion, after having read Norman Finkelstein's work and understanding the specifics of the different negotiations over the last several decades, none of the deals offered to the Palestinians were sufficient enough to have them agree. And most Israeli scholars who evaluate, even former political leaders in Israel, have said that they would not have accepted the deal that was offered to the Palestinians. So I don't agree that if quote unquote, if a partner wants peace, that Israel will make it happen, because the agreements that they've put forward, the offers, quote unquote, have not been sufficient for peace to be achieved. Most independent scholars would agree with that point. So I'm not trying to say that there aren't people within Israel, such as yourself, who don't agree with the hard right part of the government, who want peace desperately, to have security and to be able to live in relative, harmony and do what you're going to do and let people have their autonomy. I think there are good faith actors, but not within the government in terms of Palestine. Now, one last thing, and that is terms of October 7th. Okay, I've heard countless persons on these lives say something to the following: everything was fine on the 6th. These T groups always want to fire, projectiles at us. We have the Iron Dome, so we're constantly under attack, is the word. We gave them back Gaza in 2005, and all they did was shoot rockets at us. That's what I hear all the time. The problem with that argument is that never in any point since 1948 has there been freedom for these people. They've been under some form of Israeli control for many, many, many decades, including the historical displacement, which I think can't be disputed, right? I don't like bad things happening to Jewish people over the millennia, especially in World War II. I don't like bad things happening to Arab, Palestinian, Muslims in the most recent decades, right? It's not fair is not fair across the board. So in terms of what goes forward from here, I know that people from the age group have said this is just the appetizer, the meal and the dessert are coming, okay? I'm not for inflammatory language like that, but I can understand the anger of nothing moving for decades. And they've tried peaceful protest. They get shot. They tried peaceful peace agreements. They get given deals that no one could possibly agree to under good faith, right? So what are they supposed to do over time? Now, you can sit back and take it in perpetuity. But if you look what's happening, the Israeli government has chosen, for whatever reason, and subsequent governments going back decades, to increase the build out of Israeli settlements, further breaking apart and dispossessing Palestinians of the land they've moved to since they were initially scattered to the wind based on the 1948 Nakba. Now, the question I wanted to ask you is, what would you do if your family had been displaced and then your grandson, you're now the grandson of your grandfather was displaced, and you're constantly getting shit on by somebody? They're doing everything they can to make you miserable, and it appears from the outside looking in, including those subjected to it, that they're trying to be forced off their land so that another group can aggressively take it over and colonize it. What would you do? Would you sit back and take it, or would you try to do something, anything, to resist the very factors that I've just lined out? I'll shut up and let you finish.
Okay, firstly, I'm coming from a Holocaust survivor. My parents were killed in the Dachau concentration camps, but you would not hear me being victimized.
I'm very, very sorry that happened. I'm very sorry that happened.
I was sure that you're going to say that, and I appreciate that. But I'm not the type of an Israeli that would say, okay, it happened to me, my family then, and that's why I, no. But I will say that. I don't know. I've never been under occupation, or I've never been a part of a resistant group. However, I was very much in part of a parent to two toddlers in 1991 being fired by Saddam Hussein for 3 weeks, unprovoked, with Scud missiles, 500 kilograms each. I was very much under attack from Hezbollah. Even now, unprovoked. They have no business with what happens in Gaza, but they are shooting only on civilians, and all the cities are in the north. So what I'm saying is, I'm zooming out a little bit, and I'm looking like from an eagle view on what's going on down there.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. The people in the chat are like screaming. Can you please address the question that I asked first about if you found yourself living under those circumstances, what would you think you might do? And you can give your answer. Just provide some answer, then continue with your thought. Thank you. I didn't mean to.
I will definitely not grape no one, and unfortunately, I haven't been under this situation, so I don't know how to answer that question. But if you ask me personally, on my opinion, not as an official officer of the IDF or whatever, I'll try whatever I can. But me personally, I do not even have the idea of taking a knife and stabbing it in a back of a woman, for instance, or a man. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to think that way. I know how to operate in war very well, very well. I don't know how to respond to that. I'm not a murderer.
Can I share one anecdote, and then I'll let you. I'm sorry, I know I keep jumping in, and I don't want to take the airtime from you. Just from my perspective as an American citizen, so our country did all sorts of horrible things after we gained our independence. But whether you know this or not, this is not taught in American history books because it's very unflattering. But when the British colonists came in and colonized the American colonies, they took many of the homes and plantations away from the people that had been living there. They just took it because they could at the end of a gun. So people were made homeless. They had to figure out other plans, very similar to what happened in 1948, different circumstances. So in their resistance, our patriots, quote unquote, our freedom fighters that basically liberated our country from colonization by the British, did horrific things to the British in their homes. Civilians that had taken over their homes and unalived men, women, children, dogs, cats, livestock, the whole nine from top to bottom. Now, I'm against anybody who's not involved as a direct combatant from being harmed by anybody. But typically, it's not unusual historically for those that are living under occupation and oppression when they don't have the luxury of a fair face-to-face fight with their oppressor. They can't call them up at 12 noon and say, hey, let's meet at this place and let's have a fair fight. They don't have the ability. They have to use alternative tactics. I'm not for what happened on the 7th to the extent that it included the things you've mentioned. I think those are horrific, and I wouldn't do them either. Okay, I would never dream. It wouldn't enter my mind. But contextually, given the history of what I just mentioned, as well as the plight of the Palestinians and the frustration and the anger and the inability to change the circumstances, I can understand it within that context, but I wouldn't do those things myself. And I'm sorry that it happened to those civilians from the bottom of my heart because they didn't deserve it.
Okay, I will attach the last 2 bullet points. Obviously, you know that the UK, when South Africa was what it's called a dominion, they've been unaliving Boers, which originated actually from Belgium and Holland, like much worse, and they put them in the concentration camps, much worse than Gaza citizens are currently. That's one thing. Secondly, what I want to make a point is that I think that there is a problem, a big problem, between the Palestinian Authority and the age group themselves, taking a cue from the elections when the age group was elected, what happened afterwards to the Palestinian Authority officials that were thrown off the roofs in a very horrific event. So when Israel, if you want to divide, and it's not my intention, obviously, to divide the West Bank, which, by the way, 70% of the West Bank population have Jordanian passports. But if you want to divide the West Bank on one side and the age group on another side, and then you have like 2 groups of Palestinians, then you would have to make not 1 state, 2 state, you will need to make a 3-state solution. I don't see any correlation or collaboration between the Palestinian Authority and the age group as it stands now. And fortunately or unfortunately, sadly, the Palestinians would not get any assistance and help from the Arab nations around it, especially not from maybe President Assad, which I don't think that I didn't hear anyone saying anything about him unaliving his own citizens with mustard gas and chloride. I mean, these horrific things that are happening.
There's all sorts of side roads we can go down. I don't want to go too far off the beaten path. You've raised some excellent points. You've been very respectful. I've enjoyed the interchange. I do have some other guests that are waiting, but I'd like to continue the conversation. In fact, if you follow me, I'll message you back, or you can message me. And I'd like to have you on like a podcast format. We could spend an hour together easily and have a great conversation, which of course it'll maintain respectability like today. So if you're open to that, I'd love to do that.
Firstly, I am. Secondly, I will. And I just want to make my last point really, okay? About South Africa. I've been in South Africa for 8 years. I think it's a great hypocrisy that South Africa is being the one that is representing this claim. South Africa is a racist country as it is now. I'll give you one example only.
You don't have to. I'm very much aware of it. Yeah, it's a terrible thing for the script has flipped dramatically in South Africa. It's disgusting. I agree with you. I do have to get to a guest. Message me, please. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I don't know your first name, but I really enjoyed it. You're a good man.
My first name is Ariel, as it says.
Okay. All right, Ariel. It was great talking with you, sir. I'll see you next time around the corner, okay?
Likewise. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Yeah. Now that's how you have a conversation with somebody. There's points of disagreement, obviously, different points of view, but it's okay. I did want to address one last thing he mentioned about the division between the different factions of the Palestinian political scene. So there was a disagreement, clearly, between the best way to proceed, whether to work in a sort of a direct relationship with Israel and maintain the sort of three-part A, B, and C management system in the West Bank, or to be more combative and to fight back, to resist. And obviously there was fueling of that because even Benjamin Netanyahu said publicly, the best bet to limit the chance for a Palestinian state is to support, this is public, to support the H group, to finance them, to let them grow so that they can have this divide and conquer approach. You know, he said it publicly multiple times. I have the recordings of it and I have the written statements. So with that in mind, yes, it's a much better situation to have a divided government. Now, here's what I believe. I believe that the differences that are between the H group, they're more militant, more sort of strict versions of Sharia, and the more sort of moderate Fatah/PA in the West Bank. And it's not perfect, but I think they can work something out if they had a chance for combined peace among the two territories. And there was a deal that literally was the best opportunity for them to have autonomy. I think some of those divisions will be ironed out very simply. But they've never had that, so therefore within the framework of resistance, they have different points of view, and therefore that's the fragmentation. Okay, we have, I believe, next person was, boy, I can't remember. I guess we have Tariq, then we have Barry, we have about 13 minutes left, so it's gonna have to be quick. I gave that person more time because I really like to explore talks with people who have a different point of view, so we're gonna need to be a little quicker than that.
Hi, how are you?
Hello?
Hello? You are mute. Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
I was watch your show, and I'm glad to hear from you because you are truthful, always on time, and you always speak what's in your heart and your mind. So I will say hi to you all the way from Jordan, Amman.
Hello.
Okay. I want to touch on a couple of things that I heard on the gentleman who was just speaking. Let's say I do want to say that I hate Jewish. I just hate what they do. And he mentioned that they have not went over or take more land from different country. The Golan Heights, they took it.
Right.
The Shabah farm in Lebanon, they took it. Part of Jordan, on the side of Jordan River, they took it. And they have made it all to the country. And then he said to you about the October 7, right? The October 7, let's talk about the problem from the beginning. And he talked about his family is surviving the concentration camp in Germany.
Yeah.
That time when this happened to them, who accept them? The Palestinian accept them in their country. The Palestinian the one took them in. The Palestinian the one took them in. And after they took them in, they took over the country. Then he mentioned that how many? 25,000? No, it's 570,000 Palestinian, the one who flee to Jordan. And they told them, flee 7 days and then you will come back. And they never came back to this day. Yeah. And then they told other Palestinian, your home, you are not allowed to stay in it. Which is, you see on the news, I don't want to go through to this because you already know that. What they doing right now, I live in New York myself most of my time. When I see myself, I'm paying so much tax to be used for genocide. Yeah. I decided to move back to Jordan and open my own business. There is so many places in the United States. Anyone will walk in there and said, look, I want to move to Israel, quote unquote. I want to move to Israel. They give him $50,000 and a home, and a job. Whose home that you are given? If you look at Netanyahu himself, his house is belonged to Khoury family. Al-Khoury family, which is Christian from Jerusalem, he took the house from his father's side. Until that day, he's still living in it. So what they doing? They kicking Palestinian out their homes, and they taking it over and give it to someone from Staten Island, from New York, from California, from Florida, from Ohio, from different part of the place. Now, you talk about Gaza. You tell them to move out. To move where? It's just like I come to your house right now and tell you, I'm hungry, knock on your door. Then I sit in your living room. Then I come down. When you come down from your living room or from your bedroom, and I tell you, look, this is my house. Get out or I kill you and kill your kids. Then when you refuse, I kill one of your kids in front of you. Then you have your mind will tell you, okay, let's save two. And one, he passed away, he got killed. Let me just walk out. And that's what they are doing.
Tariq, unfortunately, there's a silly game we have to play on TikTok, and I wish I didn't have to bring this up, but they have an algorithm or a scanner that checks for keywords, and if you say something too much, they shut down the live and they give you a sanction. So we have to use words like unalive, T group, or T wrist, or whatever, or you can say H group. Certain terms we can't say, unfortunately. So if you don't mind, with that in mind, keep talking.
I'm still there?
Yep.
So right now you're forcing people from Gaza to flee out. You're telling people leave, and at the same time you're doing the carpet bombing, and you said leave. Leave where?
Yeah.
They belong to land, and they live 10 years. And let's be real. People talk about Jesus. Where Jesus from? Jesus is a God gift to people. Jesus is the gift of God to people, and he's Palestinian. That's why people go to Bethlehem, people go to Palestine to be in the place where Jesus was. And a lot of people, they have no clue that Jesus is from Palestine. So you're trying to get them people out of their land and to go where? That's my question. And they are not leaving. They prefer to die on their own land and not to be leaving. And I don't want to take your time. There are so many things I want to discuss with you, but even my education in the US, my father passed away in 1973. I was born in 1971, and he passed away. Just going taking merchandise to Palestine, and he got killed. Not even crossing the border. So there is so many.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry about the mute. I try to not talk over people. We can't use certain words on these lives or they'll shut it down. Like, you can't say KI double hockey stick. You have to say unalived. You can't say T-rism. You have to say, or you can say T-rism. You just can't say the full. You get the idea. So just think twice before you say some of those inflammatory words. Thank you for that point. You brought some good points up about the complete injustice of the whole situation. In fact, not only after World War II, but leading up to World War II, there was huge immigration into Palestine from Jewish people, which is at the behest of the Zionist movement. And initially it was going okay, but it got a little overwhelming, became confrontational. Like in many cases that happens. I talked about what's happening in Western Europe right now. We're seeing a lot of that in real time. People are arguing about the southwest border of the United States being a huge influx of immigrants, and it's disruptive. Let's face it. It just is what it is. So I wanted to mention really quickly, we're getting close to the end of the program. We have a few people left in the queue. We have, I think it's Alliancy, Barry, and Ahmad. I'll take the last three guests. We got to go about 5 minutes each at the most. Keep it to it. I do want to tell people who are watching for the first time, my name is Chip Barnes. I'm an Army veteran. I talk a lot about geopolitics. I've been on TikTok for about 3 months or so, and my first time on social media. So if I'm not as polished as other people, please forgive me. I'm trying to get better. But I do this program 6 days a week. So every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I go from 8 p.m. Eastern time to 10 p.m. Eastern time. And then every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, like today, from 12 noon to about 2 p.m. And we try to have respectful conversations here that are objective, fair-minded, listen to other people, not talk over each other. That's why I don't usually host the multiple guest lives, because they get a little crazy. Sometimes people just lose their minds and stuff like that. So anyway, so I have a link tree in my bio. If you like my style, you can not only check my video library out, I've done a lot of videos on a lot of these subjects, but there's a thing called Linktree, and that's nothing more than a shortcut to somebody else's social media or other things they have to offer the public. So that's what I have. If you click on the link, it'll bring up a list of stuff, normal social media like Twitter, Instagram, the whole thing. I do record these. So if you came on late and you want to catch the beginning or whatever part you missed, I record them. They're actually recorded by TikTok. So I download them after I finish the program, and then I upload them to YouTube and Rumble, which are both linked in that link tree I mentioned to you. So you can check them out. They always have the day and the date. I haven't sliced up content specific portions yet. I'm working on that right now. It just takes time. But eventually I'll have a bigger video library on Rumble and YouTube that have more of that. So if you want to help out, there's some groups you can join in the list of things on the link tree that are more discussion forums, or even what's going on with the trip. This weekend, people are going to the Palestine protest in DC, which is this Saturday, the 13th at 1 p.m. at the National Mall. So I hope you'll check that out if you're able to do so, because a lot of people are going. One of the groups I have is called January 13th Protest. So if you want to link up with other people or ask questions, you can do it there. And one last thing is, I'm somebody who takes a very pro-Palestinian stance, but I really do enjoy speaking with people like the person Ariel who just came up, because it's interesting to listen to somebody else's perspective, and you always learn something by listening, right? I learned some things that he mentioned that, I'm going to research now, that I wasn't aware of what he mentioned on a couple of things. So always appreciate that. And knowledge is an ongoing journey. And, the good thing is, if you're not married to what you know, if it's not part of your identity and you're flexible, that as you learn new things, you can do whatever you want. Maintenance, one second. Sorry about that. My bathroom, let me do this picture too before we bring up the last guest, because you're not going to believe this. I woke up to this yesterday. I'm going to show this to you. This is crazy. Let me see if I can find it in the pictures here. Let me bring up the next guest while I'm looking for this. So we're bringing up, I think it's Alliance, then Barry, then Ahmed. And that'll be it for today. Okay, let me find this backdrop.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Yes,
That's what happened in my bathroom yesterday. That was my bathroom. The sink exploded and all this black stuff came out of the bathroom. It's crazy.
wow, how'd that happen?
I don't know. There's a problem in the building with the drainage system, and it just pressurizes back up into my sink. And it's happened before, but not like this. This is looks like somebody struck oil, right? Anyway, please continue.
My name is Alliance Kalis. I was born in Haiti. I'm an
Okay.
immigrant who immigrated to the U.S. Some time ago.
Okay.
I'm a veteran who served in the United States Air Force and served in Afghanistan. I'm just like you, Mr. Chief Barnes. Thank you for your service to our country.
Yeah.
I joined the military because I believe in justice for all. And I believe in the U.S. Constitution. And I believe and love this country so much why I joined the military because of that.
Yeah.
United States is a symbol for justice. That's why the United States remain the apex of the world. What saddened me is the fact that we are engaging, our politicians are engaging in activities that doesn't represent Americans. I didn't know about the Zionists. And now I'm starting to know about the Zionists because of the conflict with Palestine. The same way I didn't know much about KKK when I was living in Haiti.
Yeah.
When I came to this country, I realized what KKK is. The way I understand it, maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me. But the way I understand it, some said that the Zionist is almost similar as the KKK. So we have no room in this 2024 to have this type of people. Here, Mr. Chief Barnes, if I were in the military with you, my life will depend on yours and your life will depend on mine. So this is the camaraderie that we established in the military, U.S. military. There's no such things as being white, black, yellow, purple. Our color is red, white, and blue. We represent the flag of the USA. And this is why I love the fact that you are the person that you are. And I learned to learn from people like yourself, to always stand for justice for all. And wherever there's no justice, we have to stand up for that. There's no reason for children, wherever they are, to die because of some folks who don't believe in equality for all.
Yeah.
I'm very saddened by the fact that what Zionists are doing doesn't represent the Jewish faith. And these people need to understand what KKK are doing doesn't represent the Caucasian way of ways. So people need to detach those things to understand that indeed, wherever you are, you're going to have people in good behavior and bad behavior. And this is all society. As long as you have human beings, this is how it's going to have bad Palestinians, good Palestinians, good Jews, bad Jews, good American, but we are human beings. So people need to understand that. Indeed, we always stand with Palestine, because wherever there are injustice, we will stand. And the injustice of 7, where these people attack innocent people, indeed, we should be we condemn those type of injustice, because children and women and elderly should never be victims of this type of terrorist act. But a terrorist act to another terrorist act, we shouldn't ignore based on who commit the terrorist act. So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you, Mr. Barnes, and send you my email before, and I hope we can continue communicating, because as a veteran to veterans, we have more to talk, and I like the fact, I don't know if you still have my email, but I like to continue talking to you in the future.
Okay.
Free Palestine.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for being here. So yeah, that's an interesting point of view from another veteran, and yeah, thanks for serving as well. I mean, it's a sacrifice to do a lot of the things involving the service. If you've never been a part of it, it's especially if you get deployed to a war, it gets crazy. This is the banner for the March on Washington. It's the March for Gaza on Saturday the 13th, which is this Saturday at the National Mall. It's taking place at 1 p.m. So a number of us are going. Somebody earlier in the show was coming off of a flight coming in from elsewhere to come. Just a lot of people are coming in. So it's going to be interesting to see that. Yeah, I'll be taking my phone and taking pictures and stuff like that. And I know they're going to be tracking people's phones and stuff. Listen, trust me, I'm already on some people's radar. Believe me. Hold on, dog. My dog's whimpering. Ruby. Oh, let me take the effects off here. Hold on, dog. The effects, get it off of there. 1 second. X. Oh, a sec. I'm trying to get this thing so I can show you the dog. There we go. Doggy. How you doing, dog? That's Ruby the dog. Anyway, back to my normal stuff. So we have some other guests left. Just to let you know, we have Barry and then Ahmad, and that's going to be it today. So for Gold and Muhammad, we're already running over on time. I don't want to make you wait, but I wanted to let you know that we're going to take 2 more guests today, and that's going to be it. Just to let you know my schedule. If you want to come back and do it again, I'll take you first the next time. I go Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern, and then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday from 12 noon like today until about 2 p.m. So we're already going over, obviously, and I got a lot of other stuff I got to do today. So I got a guest coming in tomorrow for the weekend who's going to be coming to the protest. I got to get I'm a bachelor pad. My place is a disaster. Cats and dogs and Mr. Sloppy. So, okay, we have Barry coming in. Let's see what Barry has to say. All right, Barry's timing out. Barry, if you want to come back in, please come on back in when you can. And then we have Ahmad. Oops, I think I pressed the wrong person there. Yeah, I did. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Come on back into the queue if you want. Maybe I can take one more person. See if Ahmad comes up.
Hey, here we go. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks.
Really good. Okay, thank you so much for letting me join this live. I'm gonna say like something really quick. which is the media sometimes is not showing the right information according to the news, and like I don't like to listen to the news to the news like usually because they didn't allow people to speak up, which is bother me like the most. Like why? Like when they need to speak up, they couldn't because of the social media. Like when I'm using the social media, I have the freedom to speak, you know. So why is social media should be controlled? So that's one point, and the other points like people, like no one has the right to kill somebody. There is no reason to kill somebody, and like there is a lot of.
Sorry to mute you. We have to use silly language on here, like unalive, and we can't say KILL hockey stick. We have to say like H group, T wrist. I know it's juvenile, but they have an algorithm that picks up on those words, and if you say them too many times, they shut down the live. So let me unmute. Let me mute again and unmute you because I have workers here doing some work on the place.
Okay, so do you hear me now? Oh, okay. But I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, there are people doing work on my apartment in the bathroom. So, yeah, you just have to say things like, "Did you hear what I said about the language?"
Yes, yeah. No,
Okay.
I'm just saying like there is no freedom to speak, or even the videos they're not posted. Like people they're trying to show what's happening, and this is like and also it's gonna be a mindset. Like people sometimes they, I don't know, like they didn't accept the truth. You know what I'm saying? Like the problem now in our minds, we arrived to 2024, and people should understand like there is no right for people to unalive other people. So yeah, and that's my point. I hope the peace for everyone, by the way, and we are sharing the lands to live together, to make the good things and make the people happy. That's the mission. Thank you very much for.
Yeah, thanks for coming up, Ahmed. I appreciate that. Good message. Yeah, peace for everybody, right? That'd be ideal. That's what we're hoping for in the long run. Okay, we have one more guest, Mohammed, and then that's gonna be it for today.
Hello, hi, Mr. Barnes.
Hello.
Hi. I know you're busy, so I'm not going to take a long time. I just want to say that it's kind of interesting and striking that for so many years, all my years of life, and I'm 57-year-old, you never hear the world interested to know, especially the United States, to know about the suffer of Palestinians. We're not going to now name what suffer they go through. People have been talking about this all the time. But people did not know even there is a Palestinian cause until somebody make an aggressive act, like what the H group did. Then people wake up. That just tells you that staying silent and taking the unfairness is not a solution. Resistance is a solution, because that's how people hear you. Without that, nobody will know about you, and you will die in your home, and nobody will know about your rights. And that's it.
Okay, yeah, good points. It's sad though. I think in terms of people's awareness that it's just starting to happen in the last 3 months. But it's better late than never, I guess. But that's the one good thing to come out of this, is that more people than ever have gotten a chance to understand what's going on. And the other thing is, I think the Israelis are really showing the world their true colors, which is they say one thing in public, but people are seeing the actual videos of what they're doing. And I think it's just shocked people, and it's created an emotional response that is the worst thing they could have done for themselves and the best thing that could have happened for Palestinians. Because this is the first time in my lifetime that there's been so many more people focused on it and are aware of it. And it's obviously, this is the worst the Israelis have behaved since 1948. And, you know, if it takes this amount of suffering and martyrdom to achieve that goal, to that extent, as horrible as some of the aspects of the 10/7 attacks were, they kind of accomplished at least a political goal in raising consciousness and awareness, which is a big, big win for Palestinians. And it's unfortunate that it takes something like that, something as much as violence, to create awareness. But at last it has. So
you put the right words, exactly. Yeah.
All right, Mohammed, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And this is probably a good time for me. You see all the noise that's in here. There's people drilling in the bathroom. There's a big problem with the drainage system or something. So I just want to say one more time what the schedule is here for those of you who don't know. My name's Chip Barnes. I'm a geopolitical guy. Talk a lot about this issue and others. Kind of a big picture systems thinker. Try to be fair and polite, objective as best I can. I do have a bunch of different places where I do my social media stuff. It's all listed through my bio. There's a little link that says Linktree Chip Barnes right underneath my face and my name. So you can do that. I have my backup account link there on TikTok. The reason why it's really important, first of all, I have content, if you don't know this, on my backup account that I don't have on this account. It's pretty cool. That's how I was trying to get some people to go over. But if you follow me on my backup account, I've been moved off the platform involuntarily this many times, 4 times. So one day you're going to be wanting to see me and I won't be here. That's just going to happen. It just happens all the time on this platform. So if you follow my backup account, you'll never miss me because I go live there if this doesn't work. Okay. Hey, Sophia. So but my schedule one last time is Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern, and then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday from 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern time. That schedule is pinned as a message, a little green banner in my main video page. It says pinned. It's got my schedule there. So if you forget, you can look there. My Twitter is especially good. Not that I'm patting myself on the shoulder, but I'm able to be more open and more thorough there because there's just things here you can't do. Like there's pictures you can't post, there's videos you can't post, there's things you can't say. But on my Twitter, none of those restrictions are there, at least most. So I invite you to check that out. It's just my name, @ChipBarnes, no spaces. So if you've never been on Twitter before, if you're someone who's reluctant because you prefer to swipe videos, I strongly urge you to check it out. I waited forever to do it. I'm very upset. I'm disappointed I waited as long as I did because it's good. It's really good. There's a really good political discourse there. On my Twitter feed, in case you're curious how I learned a lot of this crap, I'm not smart enough to figure it out myself. I just read a lot and listened to a lot of videos. And having said that, there's a list of a bunch of people that I've learned from and I follow over the years. And it's a nice list you can use to your advantage. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. It's pinned at the top of my Twitter page. And then finally, if you look in the links on my Linktree, there's some places down in the middle that give you different groups you can tap into. One's called Palestine in Focus, great community of people talking about these issues. There's another one called January 13th Protest. So you can go to that and you can just talk to the crowd, see who's going to be meeting up with whom and that kind of thing. There's a couple others. One's called Action for Change, which is the bigger picture movement that we're trying to build to make a difference in the world and get past some of the obstacles that are in our way. And then at the bottom of it, if you like the conversation, you want to help support me, I'm doing this full time and I haven't had a dime of income in 3 months. Well, I've had a dime. I've had a little bit of Uber money, not much, and some donations from people. But if you want to help out, I'd really appreciate it. I have a $5 a month Patreon, so it's not too much. And I'm building that out to add some other features to it. So what I'm going to be doing is probably putting these live videos up and the people on the Patreon group can see them first for like a week or maybe a few days. And then other people can see them, for example. Stuff like that. So I appreciate everybody being here today. I know you have a lot of choices in terms of the people you follow. So for watching me and for those guests who came up and talked about the tough issues, thank you. And for everyone else's contributions, because it's a much more fun adventure when it's not just me yapping the whole time. Somebody had some questions in here that I didn't get to. Somebody said I ignored their question, but I didn't see the first question. So it's not that I'm ignoring you. I sometimes just get so distracted you don't see all the comments. So I apologize for that. And if anybody was in here moderating, I don't know if I saw anybody today, but if they were, and thank you for the help if there was someone doing that. And for those of you who gave the different gifts within here, thank you for that. I don't even understand how they work. But I will let you know this. I get a little report at the end of each live. And it says like, congratulations, you've earned 17 cents. I mean, I don't know why they even do that because it's kind of silly, right? One time it said like, you've earned 0. Oh, well, don't even send me a note then. That's like sending somebody a check for 1 penny, right? It's kind of silly. So just one more thing. I download these and I'll upload it to YouTube and Rumble. Rumble's just an alternative to YouTube. Same exact kind of thing, just a different company. So if you missed any of this, you want to go back and rehear some of it, it's always going to be up there. All of the shows going back to December the 18th are archived now. And I can't reorder them. So sometimes I think on some of the channels, they're kind of out of order. I apologize. I don't even know how to put them in order. That's how bad on social media, but I'm trying to learn. I'll get them fixed eventually. So hope check that out. I look forward to next time I'll be online again tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Sometimes I go on Instagram just off the cuff. I haven't done it this week. I've held off on posting videos for a few days because they've been really, really, not circulating my videos. So I'm probably going to make a couple on just stupid shit, because that's what you have to do to kind of get back off their radar, and then I'll come back in with the stuff I like to do. So that's it for now. I appreciate you being here. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all next time, okay?